I wasn't gonna shoot this, but I'm gonna show you why I think it's worth it. So I chased this as kind of the last one I wanted to chase down, because all these holes, maybe you can see this one right here, there's actually quite a bit of rust. I might come to that. I might actually chase these guys down again, but you can see on the, maybe you can see, maybe you can't. There really isn't any, you can just see there's a lot of goop on the ends of the tap. So it's just a lot of, there's just a lot of rust down in there, and you can see, I think we can see, you can see how much rust I cleaned. There's some here. So these holes, just, they're on the bottom of the engine block. You know, they just get rusty. So chasing them down and kind of cleaning them out, I'll blow them out with the air so they're nice and clean. You might as well do it while you're here, because for the rest of your life you'd be cursing, because these are some of the brackets and stuff that are a big pain in the butt. I just wanted to show you that. Just so I'm getting a lot of junk out of the holes, just makes putting it together kind of a pain. All right, day 6 of the hostage situation. I finally got my hands on the infamous plug. Looks like this. This is the old one that I beat the crap out getting it out. So the new one's just not drilled out. I just put a light coat of oil on there. Trying to do this behind the camera. And then I'm gonna just try to, got a big humongous hex guy who is about OD on that guy. I'm just gonna lightly, haha, yeah, right. It's going down. Okay, that looks good. Huh, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Thought that was gonna be a real big pain. All right, so then I can do engine mounts on this side of the engine. I'll do that, and then I did last night, just couldn't resist. Had to put the header on this side. It's just loosely, as per the instructions from Doug from DT. One thing DT did say in their instructions, they actually provide some bolts that they say to use on this side. I already had brand new lock nuts and brand new exhaust studs, so I'm going to use them. I don't think it would make any difference. I just think it's really hard to get to this side of the engine when the engine's still in the truck. So let me do the engine mount on the other side, and then I'll film putting the header on the other side, and then we're gonna, great moment of truth when we put the crossover pipe and see how much clearance there is. All right, let's see how this goes. Okay, it goes by me dropping the first one. Get a couple of them started. It's very exciting, I know. Guys, screws in bolt. Saves the world. Yeah. That's what happened. God, those are going to be really close to that. Coolant hose, aren't they? Can't imagine the coolant hose goes underneath, but it could. Alright, I'm going to run the rest of these in, and then I'll flip around to the back of the engine, and we'll see what the crossover pipe looks like. Alright, I didn't film the crossover pipe going on. It was really easy. While these guys on both sides, while both left and right headers were still loose, you just connect, there's 4 bolts. Okay, 1, 2, you just get these guys started. 3, 4, and it's kind of like a ball type connection inside here, I think, which is pretty common with exhaust. And then you just kind of slowly get them fitted together. You kind of gotta tighten this up, tighten the headers up a little bit, kind of work on tightening these. And you're not going to get them, they're still going to be fairly floppy and loose. Honestly, I cannot imagine doing this when the engine was in the truck. You'd be angry. You'd be really angry. So that ball connection is nice and even. They're as even as I can get it all the way around. So I hope I get a pretty good seal around here. And then once you kind of feel like you not totally torqued down, but they're nice and snug, then I went around and you start in the center and you torque from the center out. And these guys are, I think, like 41 foot-pounds. And these are just the stock. There's lock nuts from Toyota. I do believe it calls for after so many minutes of runtime, supposed to retorque these. Hopefully I don't have to do that, but I guess I'll have to check it. There is a modification, I believe, that's needed for this bracket right here. And like I said, on the transmission kickdown, might have to be modified because it comes up through here and the engines stay. I'll have to get that part on next, or I'm gonna do it afterwards. I did have to move off my engine stand. The crossover pipe was hitting how I had it configured. So I set it down onto the low-tech engine stand, which works pretty nice anyways, because we're gonna do next step, which is the flywheel and backing plate and stuff like that. So like Toyota always keys stuff in. Let's talk about the order of this. So there's two, and when I took them off, I'd mark them. There's two little subplates, inner and outer, that kind of sandwich the flex plate, or they call it the flywheel. I marked them when I took them off with out, meaning pointing away from the engine. And this one also out. And if you notice, the way you can tell if this is the inner one is it has a little nub on it. And if we look in here, that nub goes here. So there's no way you can screw this up unless you were to put it on. We got to do it in a certain order. Sorry. So the drive plate is going to go. All right, let me put this on a tripod. I can't do it one-handed, and I'll come right back. All right, let me put it on tripod. So this backing plate goes on here like so. I did sandblast it and repainted it with some Rust-Oleum. Just cleaned up. Directionally, there's only one way you're going to get it on there. I'm going to put some blue Loctite on this. I think the torque bin, this is one of those little M6 10s with a super light torque spec. And I'm just going to use an open end wrench. I'm not going to actually put the torque wrench on here with the super light torque spec. Okay. Look like we're good. No one's going to get caught or rubbed. Okay. So now I'm going to take my keyed one, which we just discussed, goes like this. Getting a good connection on there, not floppy or nothing. I did put marks on them, so I'm going to put these guys back in. I can't know because, right, that guy spins around. Different engine, but I'm going to put these guys on in the same configuration. In this one, there is no keying on this one, but there's kind of a lip in it. So the lip kind of goes out. And then I did grab new ones of these guys. There's there's actually a specific, and actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to transfer, and I'll cut it and come back in a sec. There's actually an order that you're supposed to do this in, up to 61 foot-pounds, and they do talk about putting red on here. I'm just going to use blue. That's going to be good enough, I guess. And it's kind of weird. They say 61 foot-pounds. I'm kind of confused. They say 61 foot-pounds, and then they say 63 on the flywheel. I'm not entirely sure why, if it's like a two-pass deal or something, or they're talking about this connection to the torque converter. But I think that's a different torque spec as well. I'm going to put these numbers on here, and I'll go around in that specific order and get them torque down to 61. Alright, cool, you can, okay. So I put the number, right, 8 on there, and I'm going to go around, and I can't really see them. These guys are going to get a pretty good dose of blue, because this is really, I don't think this is really true a service type item. We don't have anything in here. Hey, I think I'll just take my West out today, and I'll get the photo. That works. The one's up there, I'm going to have two, and over there. Probably speeds will switch up, because we're boring. 3's over here. 4 up here. 5 up here. 6 goes here. 7 goes here. And 8 goes up here. Alright, I'm going to press up. So let me show you what worked well to get these guys torqued on there because it was kind of a pain. So I just have a breaker bar with a 19 up front, so I can hang on to the front and the rear. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to torque these guys. So then, when you go to torque these guys, you can grab on back here and hold on up in the front and then go around. I hit torque on all these guys, so they're all good, but that's how I did it. Big torque wrench. I like them. On the larger bolts, it's the way to go. All right, on to the next step. All right, we're almost ready to go. The whole front end of the engine is put together and torqued. The fuel rail is on. I'm not going to put the intake manifold on for a little bit. I'll do it in the truck because I don't think it's really that hard compared to other stuff. The spark plugs are out and I have these covered. And the reason the spark plugs are still out and not in, and that's the reason why I haven't put the intake manifold on yet, is that I need to pressure lube this engine. And to pressure lube this engine, the rebuilder of the engine recommended, for warranty purposes, that I run for the first 500 miles some SAE 30 break-in oil. I don't know really it's totally necessary, but since they're saying to do it, I'm gonna do it. So I have experience with old like 350s where you could turn the distributor / oil pump and pressure prime it like that. However, this one is a little bit different, and I didn't really see any information in the factory service manual, so I went delving online to see, and people suggest filling up the oil filter. And while that seems like a really great idea, is to fill up the oil filter. Magnetic light is stuck to my oil filter. You know, think about an oil filter that's full of oil and then trying to go whoomp. I'll try putting some in here, but I'm not gonna totally fill it all the way up because I know that's futile. That's not gonna happen. So what I did do though, let me move the camera back just a little bit. What I did do is grab a little squirty bottle, and this one was empty. And I'm gonna try going down here and see how much oil it'll take before it spills. Not very much. The break-in oil is really, really thick stuff. That's interesting. Yeah. Not very much. I thought about adding it through the oil pressure guy as well. I guess if I seal this off and give it a good squirt, it seems like I'm able to get some in there. It's still running out. I do have a pan underneath there because I kind of figured this would be a little bit futile. Yeah. Oops, sorry. As you can see, it's totally like vapor locked. Won't let me put any more in there. Alright, so I'm gonna do what I can here, and I'm just gonna fill the oil filter up halfway and slap that thing on there and spill some more oil. And then fill it from the regular oil cap up on top here on the valve cover. And I'll put 4.5 quarts in because it probably is going to take a little more than, because it's completely dry and empty, it's probably going to take a little more than 4.5 quarts. I'll check on the dipstick. And then I'll get it on the hoist here and get it up in the air, and we'll lower it into the compartment. I'm a little skeptical that it's going to fit with the headers on it. It looks like the transmission dipstick is going to have to get modified, but we're going to find out. Okay, this might be some pretty good comedy, so I'm going to attempt to film it. I did fill it up pretty. There's about probably 3/4 full, and hey, you know what? We only lost, like most of it, or some of it, maybe. I guess I do kind of like these oil filters that I usually used to tighten these just by hand, but you can see I'm just way up here in the ratchet like a shorty. I do like these Toyota filters that have, they're a little bit more expensive, but they're kind of nice. Well, hey, that, yeah, I guess worked out okay. I don't know if that's going to help the prime or not. I'm going to put the rest of it in, check the dipstick, see how we're doing, and yep, then we're going to get her up on the hoist. I keep saying that for about, a week. All right, I'm kind of reaching the moment of truth here to see if it's going to fit. You can see the crossover pipe is really, really close. I think it's going to go. I just have to go real slow, like just little half-inch increments, and kind of move it and jostle it and get it in the right spot. But it looks like it's going to go. I did, and up here I'm really close to this guy. I figured it would have been easier to have left the harmonic balancer / crank pulley, whatever you want to call it, off, because I figured this would kind of be the spot, but I think it's going to work. Just don't want to destroy my heater core, guys. You can see, so I'm just kind of in between those two spots, but I think I can kind of move it sideways to get a little more room and then drop it just a little bit. And I'll just keep working it down. It's definitely off center, but this is the only way it's going to go in with the crossover pipe on, is to be a little bit, my finger, would be a little bit off to the driver's side, and then once I get it in, to do that. So let me keep working on that, see if I can get her down in there. She's going to go. All right, the engine hoist is empty. And it's in. The transmission's not totally lined up yet. There is, over on this side of the engine, I'm going to get down there and I'll get a light and I'll show you, but there's a place where you can actually get a line of sight into the first mounting bell housing to transmission adapter housing transmission, right? You can get a bolt actually started and come through there, and it makes the rest of the process really easy. Everything cleared. I didn't destroy anything. I just kind of had to snake it down. We just kind of snaked it down, moved it, snaked it down, moved it, kind of, and I had my son help me, and we just kind of held it back and forth, and I yelled at him a lot, poor guy. So I don't know, there wasn't a lot of drama in this for me, but I guess I was fairly prepared for it. I wouldn't hesitate to drop another engine into a 4Runner again. I guess given having a garage and not having to worry about rain and all that stuff makes it a lot less stressful. The headers definitely, there's going to be some clearance issues down here. I'm going to have to move some of this stuff. I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do. Shouldn't be too hard. There's only a couple things. The breather tube, the vacuum tubes, and then I think the transmission kickdown guy and the engine stay might have to have a little modification to them. And I think they actually sent a bracket or just an extension or something. Just moves the mounting point a little bit. So we'll see. Let me take a look at it. I'll start to get the transmission bolts in there, and I did go to the trouble of picking up new ones from Toyota just because I don't do this very often. I figured, get new ones. I don't know, wasn't really that hard, but it's not running and all hooked up yet, but actually getting the engine in I thought would be harder than that. All right, I'll show you what I got going. I'm up underneath the truck. This is where the AC compressor would be, and I do have my tranny cooler lines out right now to make this a little bit easier as well. So you can see there's the flex plate back there, kind of where the starter engages on that gear, and right above it is one of the starter bolts. So I was able to just kind of eye that up, and then if you look, the hole that's right below that, the lighting's probably pretty bad in here, but the hole right below that is one of the bell housing to engine connections, and I was able to eye that up and get it so it looked like it was lined up, and one of my tranny bolts started in there. So I'm just going to go around and do that same thing to all of the ones. Once I get this one started and kind of bring things together a little bit, I didn't have to use a lot of force to kind of move it around. I just kind of wiggled things around until it lined up. Definitely helps to have stuff out of there so you can get a line of sight on it, but that's a whole other story. All right. All right, so I have all my tranny bolts, all 6 of them started. They're all just kind of snug down. I need to get out. Need to go find every single extension that I own and and chain them all together. And I got the transmission kind of tipped down here so I can get up in there and cinch these guys down. And then I don't know what's next. I got to think about it. But what I wanted to show you is, so this is the dug header, and which ended up about here, which seems like based on the instructions. So this is the front air fuel guy, and here's the hookup for the front air fuel guy. So he doesn't work with the, looks like I'll have to, and there, I think there looks like there's plenty of line up here. I'll just have to move the mount or whatever. The other thing that I ran into, and let me get the light up in here so we can kind of see this. It's so hard to film by yourself in these weird locations. Okay, can I see what I need to see? I can't see what I need to see here. So the starter on this truck, you know, if you've ever changed it, it's a huge pain in the ass anyways. So this is the lower starter bolt, which like I used to line up the bell housing when I first started. And I also had this guy in here too, but what happened to me is, if you can see, you cannot take this bolt out now. There's no way this bolt's coming out. And it kind of got jostled around. It got out here and it got hung up a little bit when I was fooling around, and then I had to do a bunch of fooling around and tip the engine up a little bit to get this back out so I could actually push it in. So once the dug headers are in, you ain't taking that bolt out unless you're going to take the engine out, or you're going to take or loosen the, or take off the crossover pipe, which also is a huge pain in the butt. But I think the long and short of that for installation is put your starter bolts in before you mate the engine and the transmission together if you got the Doug Thoroughly headers on, which I don't remember it from the instructions because I would have remembered that. If you don't, and if I would not have gotten lucky, I probably would have had to put the engine back on a hoist and pull it back out to get that bolt in there to get the starter in. That would have been really disappointing. So life pro tip on that one, I'm gonna get the starter up in here, I think maybe next, and start working on relocating some of the lines and stuff. All right, I've been out on vacation wheeling around, and I'm back at it finally a couple weeks later. Back up in the same spot here, and the starter up here is in. Let's see if I can focus on that. Yep. So with the Doug Thoroughly headers as well, the next the next interesting thing that's going to happen, you cannot put the starter in up through. Here's a brake bracket right here, and if with the stock headers, if you're going to replace the starter, you can use a trick where you pop this guy out and loosen it. You don't have to take the brake line off, but that will give you enough play where you can actually get the starter up through here. with the headers, that will not happen anymore. The only way I was able to get the starter in here was to take, if you see if I can get up in here enough to film. The only way to get is to take the AC bracket completely off, and your AC would have to come out as well, but mine's out right now, so it wasn't a huge deal taking the bracket off. Then the starter can come in through here, then you can hold the starter up, and like it's really hard. Just need like one of those endoscopic cameras to film up in here. Then you can get the starter in. So another life pro tip: if you have to change the starter or put the starter back in, the only way to do it is to take your AC out, compressor out, get it out of the way, then take the bracket off, then move your starter up in here, and then you can get your starter in. So I'm in the process of sorting everything, and the first thing I'm going to have to sort is the transmission dipstick tube. Either do away with it or have to probably take the pan off, or I'm probably going to take the pan off, and I'm going to have to bend this. The old one used to come up right through here, but of course, focus, you can't do that anymore because the headers are in a different place. So I also had to loosen up this ball style connector on both sides, and you can see there's a little bit of play right now in here. So there's the clearance for the air fuel is really tight. The firewall isn't a problem on this side, on the passenger side. I don't have any light on the driver's side, but the clearance on the crossover pipe with the firewall is really close. And so I'm going to leave this for the exhaust guys, and I'll talk to them before they do it, but you kind of have to get it and look back and forth. There's a very, very small window of where everything has a nice amount of clearance, and the crossover pipe is not actually contacting the firewall, because if you're up too high, and you use this one, I suppose you could not use this, decide not to use this one and put in, because you have to modify your cat anyways. You would have to decide to not use this one and modify your cat, put in a new bung for the air fuel on your new cat, which is going to be downstream from this guy. Then that wouldn't be an issue. Then you could probably have a little more adjustment here, but I'm going to try to use the air fuel in this guy because it's there. It makes making the cat a little bit easier. And then you just have to be careful of your firewall clearances. And it is tight, and it has to be perfect. The engine and the transmission are nice, and they're sitting right where they should be in their mounts. So, like I said, I'm going to leave this guy loose, so then I'll talk to the exhaust guys and make sure that they check clearance before we do the cat. One of the other things I need to do is there's 2 bolts on your transmission bell housing adapter, and there's usually a bracket that comes down and hooks up with this piece right here on the stock. So there's a bracket, which is a good idea because it's the only other connection down here the exhaust has. I'm going to have to fabricate a bracket, and I picked up a new bracket, and I'll see if I can just chop it up and weld down a little piece, and I'll show you that once I get it. The next thing, that when I took the engine out, I hate the transmission. These things are my nemesis. The transmission cooling lines, I mean, you love to hate them, right? You like that they cool your transmission fluid, but you kind of hate messing with these things. Well, one of the things I noticed, let me grab one. There's these little sleeved things that go over, not that, they go over this guy. I'm gonna pull these out again because I had to mark the location. I've never replaced these before, but I noticed that when I was messing around with these lines, that these things on my truck were literally disintegrating, falling apart, and they were rock hard. So I grabbed, I think there's 6 new ones. This is, while I'm laying down here underneath the truck, this is the cushion. So you'll need 6 of those. There's 3 brackets. If you've, I really, these things are a huge pain to get in and out of here anyways, but I also took all my brackets and sandblasted them and painted them with a little Rust-Oleum just to clean them up while I was going at it. So I cleaned those guys all up. There's 3 brackets on the transmission cooling line. There's one back here that's just a clamp style that goes to your bell housing. And you can see I have the cushions on here. This one's actually really easy. And let me talk about the process of... These brackets are virtually impossible. There's no cushions in these guys right now. So even when the cushions are old and smushy or smashed down, getting this clamp style, there's a 10 millimeter, and like I said, I'm going to pull these lines out of here and I'll explain this a little better, but getting these guys lined up along with this to be lined up and tightening these things down, and then there you can see the other clamp hopefully up there that also has the starter wire clamp to it. I'll take that off. So what I did, you can kind of see right here, I put the lines up, I snugged down the connections to the transmission. I just snugged them down so they would be where they were supposed to be, both of these guys. And once I had that done, then I went back and hooked these, or just threaded them in loosely to figure out where the cushions were going to need to go and the configuration of the brackets. And now I'm going to take them off and I'm going to put the cushions in the right spots and I'm going to tighten them down, because there's absolutely no way in hell that you can get the cushions in here and smash this clamp together. Like there's the smashing, right? There's no way you can get these guys together and smash that in there with that in this position. I don't know, maybe if you were like had some kind of mystical monkey powers or something and had triple jointed arms with 2 extra elbows, you could get up in here and do it. I haven't figured out a way to do it. So I'm going to take the lines out. I'm going to put the cushions in place, put the brackets where they're supposed to be, have the lines configured, and I'm going to bring them back and put them in like that. But let me take them out and get the cushions in and get things started and snugged up, and then we'll take a look at them. Okay, like I said, I took them out and then I put the new little cushions in there. You can see my marks. I hope I'm fairly close. There's really not too much. You got to be pretty much right on, because these guys need to seat down, and I've tried leaving these a little bit looser to try to move them. I don't know. We'll see if this works, but this is the only thing I can think of is to put marks, right? To put little marks on there so you can find out where the clamps go. Put the new little cushions on. They're really tough. They just don't really want to work out. But there's no metal on metal contact there, and they're tightened up, so let me get them put in. Alright, I got my little transmission center lines all set up and reinstalled. That actually worked okay to kind of pre-assemble it. Made it a lot easier to slip it in there. Just so that I remember for next time. I actually have mine set up, and this is... We got a light on here so we can actually see it. So this is a Hayden out of Australia. It's a larger capacity cooler, and it seems to work really well. So I have the hot coming out, going into the bottom of this guy, and then the supposedly, I would say, cool right on top, coming out and goes down, and then when I run my radiator, that cool goes through my radiator and then back into the cool on the transmission. So what that, the reason I did run it in kind of series like that is because I live in a colder area, and I do think you want to be a little bit careful. This actually, when it's cooler out, can keep the transmission in like the 120 or 130 degree mark, and you need to, I guess in my opinion, it seems like the transmission operates smoother. Maybe it's all in my mind, but if you're 150 to 180, seems like the magic range for temperature. If you can keep the fluid in that range, it seems like the transmission runs nice and smooth, shifts nice and smooth, but if it's too cold or it's too hot, things kind of don't work as well. What else? So I'm at the point where I need to get up in here And the transmission dipstick tube, of course, with the Doug Thurley headers, the stock location is completely blocked off, so I'll need to bend up some custom stuff to try to get that up and get the fluid level in the right spot and all that stuff. Try to figure that out. And so I would have never really known this had I not done it, but I parted out a California truck. The California truck is the one that's sandblasted, and this is the one off my truck, which is Federal, as far as I know. You can see the output looks different, has different bends on it. You can also see that the pipes coming up, get these out of the way. The pipes actually have different bends, and they're actually different length. The California version is actually on the top, at least, is 2 5/8 inch longer. The brackets are also completely different of the Federal versus the California, and the dipsticks are also different with different marks at different levels. So my plan at this point is to take this one, who I think is going to be a little bit easier to use because I have to try to, because this guy is straight coming out of here, I'm going to put a couple bends in him. I would have to try to unbend this guy and then rebend him, which I've had bad experience with in the past. And then I can use this guy up on top, it looks like, once I get a clear shot with this guy. And I think the bracket's going to be pretty simple. It's going to be a little more complicated with this one, and I would have to unbend this guy too and try to kind of rebend him to get him more like the California one, which I guess really isn't. And then I'm going to use the California stick. I also need to measure the capacities of these. They look the same to me, but once I get them painted, I'm going to blast both of them, repaint them, and then I'll measure it with water. It won't be a big deal once they're painted and stuff. It's not really surprising that the California version of the transmission pan and stick would be easier because Doug Thurley is in California, and guys that make aftermarket parts for 4Runners and they live in California, they really only give a shit about California, which totally makes sense. If I sound bitter, I am a little bit, because every time I want to do something cool to my truck and get an aftermarket part that's manufactured in California, I have to do a bunch of modification on it, and the California guys are, oh, it just bolted right up to mine. So good for you. You guys get to live with your crazy emission standards, so the rest of us have to suffer through customizing our stuff that comes from you. I just thought it was kind of interesting about the transmission pans, so I'm going to bend these guys up and we'll see what I come up with, and I'll come back and shoot a little bit and show you what I did. All right, it's like day 37 of the hostage situation here in the garage. Here's like what I came up with the California, with the Cali stick. So the ultimate test was, does it fit in there? And it did, and it goes down. It's kind of hard. It's a little bit harder. Actually, not. It would seem impossible to make it more inconvenient and then harder to make the transmission dipstick go in, but I was able to do that. So actually, it's probably easier. Let me disassemble this, and I'll show you. I'm going to show you from the bottom here before I do that, though. This is kind of like a caveman bracket. It's really just a piece of aluminum that goes down, and then a piece of aluminum that's bent over and then bolted up on the engine. And probably can't see down there. Maybe we can. Can't see with your lights in the way. So that guy goes down. That's really, the camera has a hard time focusing. Goes down in that direction through there, everything, the clearance, and I think the location of the dipstick is pretty close to where it was before. Hopefully I kind of put the intake up on the top and put the intake, or put the air box and the plenum and the air intake over here, and I looked, and so I don't think there's going to be any interference. I didn't look at the coil. I don't think there is going to be a problem. I should probably grab one and just make sure. This is about the best location I could come up with. It's not whacking anything. The only downside would be, if you can see down in there where the crossover pipe bolts to the header, you probably have to take this guy off to really get to that bolt. But you know, I mean, you don't really like take your crossover pipe off very often. So let me jump underneath and I'll show you what that ended up looking like down here. So underneath the truck, you can see I kind of marked it up, and I bent the pipe in a couple of spots pretty good, but it's not too bad. So this, if you remember, it was straight coming out of here. Let me kind of get over here. And you can see where it goes up through this spot. And you can see where it kind of gets in the way of that bolt. You probably could get to the bolt if you really had to, but probably not. Another thing that I'm going to do that I don't think Toyota does actually, and in fact I know they don't. I'm going to put, hopefully you can see this, it's so close to my face. I'm going to put, actually I just have one on this side and one on this other side of the pan right now. It's kind of dark down here. I just put studs in two different locations, kind of keyed. These are normally just bolts, and it's really inconvenient. I've only had to do it a couple times, but the transmission pan on these transmissions is really a pain because you kind of slop around a little bit. But like the oil pan and everything else like this is keyed with a couple of studs to help guide it on, and then just nuts. And I can't see any reason why that's going to hurt anything. So when I need to take this off and clean it up the rest of the way and sandblast it, just clean up some of the other stuff that's on it from me bending it and stuff, and then I'm going to paint it. And then I'll glue it back up here. But having these keyed studs so that it helps guide it into place is one thing that I'm going to do. Let me go jump back up on top, and I'll take apart that bracket and we'll take a look at it. All right, let me try to give you an idea. So I'm not going to be able to do this by myself filming, so I have the bracket out. And so this guy comes up from that location that we were looking at. It looks like this. And then I just took, and this is just a little piece of 1 inch by 1/8 inch aluminum with some 8mm holes in it. And then I just have some M8 125s. Oops, actually these guys are longer. M8 by 125 bolts, and then I ran this little guy like this, and then some M8 125 guys like that. And so I took that same piece of aluminum, and if you've never worked with aluminum, it's actually pretty easy to work with. You can bend it if you heat it up. You can see there's a little bit of discoloration here, but there's no cracks or anything. This is still nice, and I mean, there's a lot of times if you try to bend aluminum, it will crack and break on you. I just cut a little elongated slot with actually a woodworking mortising tool that I have and a router. And it works really pretty well as long as you go slow and you do it well and you take your time with it. And then like I drilled a hole there. The reason I did the elongated slot was because I have a shorter M8 125 bolt which goes into the engine. Actually it goes like in this orientation, and that way this allowed me to adjust this bracket back and forth on this bolt. It's a little tight, like so. So I was able to adjust the position of that because it was really tough. I tried actually to create just drilling a hole, and then it's like guessing, and so I was like, yeah, let's make an educated guess, which is a slot. And then this guy down here just goes like this, like so. So like I said, it's a caveman bracket. If I had a weld there, if I had like a TIG setup, I'd make a really cool bracket, but I don't, so. So this just basically goes like this and then bolts onto the engine like that. And this holds it in the right spot, and it's not vibrating against anything yet. It's not, there's no contact, it's not even close to anything. So that was the bracket, the caveman bracket that I came up with to do that. And I think that about does me on the left side, the passenger side of the engine. I think I can put the power steering pump and the AC compressor back in place and move over to the right side of the engine and sort out the transmission kickdown and a couple of the electrical connections that need to be taken care of. Kind of feel like I'm in the home stretch. This is really a pain in the butt doing this kind of stuff. All right, back on a different day. It's like day, I don't know, 40 something on the hostage situation. So I thought I was in the home stretch, but according to Doug Thurley headers, you're not ever on the home stretch. Everything, anyway, anything that attaches to the engine where the Doug headers can get in the way, they actually get in the way. So this is how the engine stay looks. I don't have a ton of light. There we go. You can see it has like these little ridges. I ended up having to grind away these, and now I'll probably have to sandblast this bracket and paint it because I'm anal about it. But so you can see I had to actually grind away. So I probably wouldn't use this as a lift point again. It's super inconvenient to get into the engine stay now. I'm going to show you a couple other things on the video. I'm going to cut it and come back and I'll show you the one other piece that I don't have filmed yet. Transmission is all taken care of, I think, with the custom bracket, and this is, I think, the last piece. I do have to mess around with the transmission kickdown, of course, but let me show you the O2 sensor location where that bracket had to get relocated, and then we'll cover this one, and then, my God, I'm almost to the point where I can put oil pressure in and start this damn thing. All right, here's the output side. Let's take a look here. So here's where the cat is going to attach, and we've been down here a lot. So you can see this. I'm going to point to it with my finger and I'll pull back, but I ended up having to create a little bracket there. That's where the O2, the front O2 sensor air fuel mixture sensor now connects, because, well, it's an option. If you do use this connection for the headers, which I decided to do, then it looks like it has about the same amount of clearance, I guess. I don't know. I'm going to probably mess with this heat shield since it's all messed up and old and full of stuff. So I'm going to see what I can do. I have a couple extra heat shields. I'll bend one up and attach it up there. Hopefully that'll help a little bit. But so this is the last, and then let me go back up to the engine stay and I'll show you what I had to do for the engine stay. But this is the last piece that needed to get modified down here. All right, let me see if I can show you what. So here's the engine stay, and it's not tightened onto the supercharger. But if you had a stock intake manifold, it would go in kind of largely the same location. I just wanted to make sure I had the height about right. My other bolts are torqued down. This is my last one that I have to do. So let me see if I can get in here and focus. I'm probably not going to be able to get on that bolt to see it. Maybe you can see it right here. So there's a, I'm trying to think, M10125, I think, with a 14 millimeter head. It's kind of a weird looking bolt. And you can see where I ground away those wings on here. It's the only way. If you do that, it's way too short. Actually, the bolt that Toyota calls for in the parts diagram actually backs off and runs into the header, and I actually had to cut the old one off because I used a different bracket. So I should back up just a little bit. So Toyota sells an engine hoist support specifically for these engines, and I use that on both sides. It's a little bit beefier. These ones, I've lifted engines with these ones before, and they tend to bend sometimes. They're just not quite as beefy as the other ones that are specifically designed to lift engines. You could do all kinds. There's all kinds of connection points with chains and around the exhaust header studs and all kinds of stuff, but it worked out for me. I had to use that the other ones. They did work out really nice for hoisting the engine. However, like I said, this bolt was too long, and I actually had to sawzall it off to get the other bracket off. So that was pain number one. And then pain number two is I had to grind off those wings like I showed you a little bit ago in the video. And then once you do that, you're able to get like a stubby or just a 14 millimeter box end down here with the adjustable head, and you'll be able to get on it. It was the only way to do that. So there's absolutely no way. I did try a bunch of different stuff, and I even tried crow's foot socket ends and stuff to try to get in there. There's just no way with the headers because it's a completely different location where the headers are run. So hopefully this will work. And now I got to get my bent up transmission kickdown on these guys. Let me get that done and we'll take a look at that. I keep saying, I think that's the last modification needed to fit the headers, but you really got to make sure you want headers because they're a huge pain in the butt. I've had to modify so many things to get it to work. and move stuff around, and hopefully I won't melt wires and catch stuff on fire. I think I have pretty good clearance down in here for everything. There's a couple inches of clearance. The only thing that maybe will give me issues, and I'm not super worried about it, is this is the front differential breather, which actually gets kind of close right here. If I had to, I'm gonna watch him when I first start up and run a little bit. And if he looks like he's gonna melt or something, I'll probably have to relocate that guy, which wouldn't be the end of the world, but yet another thing to do. All right, ever forward. Okay, I'm finally making it down to what I'm gonna call the last thing that I need to do, which is, if you have a 2000 or newer 4Runner, and this is a 2000, I don't think the 2001 or the 2002 have these, so this wouldn't be an issue for you. This is the transmission kickdown, and so when you're climbing hills or something and you drop below a certain speed, this guy will downshift you, and so this guy runs across here and runs down below and hooks up with the transmission. I'll get underneath and we'll kind of trace it down there. Let me show you what this is. I actually had two of these brackets. That bracket looks like this. It's like a raceway or something. And that transmission kickdown cable runs through these little connection points, right? Those little clampy things. And it curls down in this direction underneath the headers. So the headers are back inside this curl portion. And so if you look, and I did try, this is a different bracket. I tried to just kind of drop it down. It's the caveman bracket. But I was just trying to figure out what was going to work. I tried to drop the bracket down and push it over. And I was able to get clearance around the headers, but then I started running into this pretty tight little space down here where it needs to go. That first bracket that I tried, then I was running into one of the brake lines. I actually was, I was able to get clearance around the brake line by kind of messing with it a little bit, but it was way too close for comfort. It's going to have a really hard time focusing down there. It was, the engine actually moves back and forth in this direction and that direction quite a bit, especially if you get a little bit of a misfire or something, or it runs rough for a second. I have no doubt in my mind where I was running that raceway down here, it would have smacked into that brake line. So if you can see this, hopefully we can get down in here. It's really a tough spot to see. It's really a tough spot to film. So I ended up just cutting off this bracket right here. It doesn't run into the headers. It stops there. There's only one clamp, which is less than ideal, but Toyota kind of builds stuff for tsunamis, and so where most people would have 1 or 2 clamps, Toyota has 5. So you can see what I ended up doing was cutting this bracket off right about here. I did try to bend that other one up a bunch, and it just, without a lot of advanced bending stuff, I don't know, there's just no way to easily do it. So anyways, I cut this guy off right here. This top clamp is the only thing that's remaining there. Let me jump down underneath and show you what I came up with underneath. Then actually I have the bracket up here. So, and I'll get down there and show you where this installs. So this is actually a older, I say brackets off of everything because they come in handy sometimes. This is actually a transmission cooler line bracket from the other side of the truck that I saved off of a different truck that I parted out of. And this actually worked out just perfect. And I ended up putting this 90-degree bend in this portion, and then there's a captured M610 nut in there. So let me get underneath the truck and show you how this works. And this is my second connection point, because you can't use the connection point that the transmission kickdown uses. It's too tight with the headers, or I guess if you're okay with that transmission kickdown right up against the headers, you could do that, but that's probably a recipe for a fire. So let me show you how I routed this and how the clearance is. All right, we're up underneath on the driver's side by the transmission. There's two brackets. This is the transmission line, or transmission wiring harness comes back on the transmission. And here's that. Let's see if we can get a shot. So here's that. You can see I have good clearance. I mean, it flops around a little bit, but it's pretty secure. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. And here's that bracket we were looking at, this one right here. And then it goes up. There's a kind of a loop clamp that goes down in this position. And then that's where that M10 holds it down on here. So it's a little bit floppy, but at least it's not in contact with the headers at all. And it's secure. It's not going to go anyplace. And then that existing, get that guy in there. I have to mess with that. I gotta mess with that. This guy's in the wrong position now. His little tab biter doesn't let him. He needs to go straight up. I'll fix that. But so that's how that worked out. I just had this guy unplugged for right now, so otherwise there's no way we're gonna take a look at that. So that worked out okay, I guess. Kind of a pain. Save your brackets. Sometimes you can reuse them. Okay, last thing taken care of. So just so you can see the way that looks when this guy was, the bracket's in the correct position, but because now I have this other bracket behind it and have it kind of sandwiched in there, this guy just kind of needed to swivel this bracket up. So that's how that fits. Turned out okay. So once again, last thing done.
Alright.
Did you push the red button?
Yes.
Okay. So we're all totally back together. Batteries in. As per Yoda Shop, I'm running a 30 weight break-in oil for the first 500 miles. That's in there. The coolant is topped off. I ended up draining my ATF, so I got new ATF in. What I took out is what I put back in, about a gallon, a little bit more than a gallon. What else? Oh, so pressure primed the engine by not putting in the spark plugs and turning it over 3 or 4 times for 10 or 15 seconds each time. And lo and behold, the oil pressure light goes off. And so I'm pretty sure that the pressure prime is done. So I've got all that stuff going on. So it's going to be loud. There's no catalytic converter on it. It's probably going to smoke a little bit. We'll see if we can start it and back it out. Yoda Shop says to run it at 1800 to 2500 RPMs for the first 15 minutes, and then shut it off. And then I'm probably going to have it towed to an exhaust shop and have the catalytic converter made for me. So this is our first try at starting it. I reconnected the fuel pump and torqued everything down. Let's see what happens.
Do I need some earmuffs?
I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be that loud, dude.
It's gonna be that loud.
I don't think it's going to be that loud.
I'm gonna drop your phone. It's that loud.